All you have to do is turn on the news or look anywhere, right? And what are the stories telling us? Oh, AI is coming for my job. So I think there is that reality, right? That they might have seen friends whose jobs are changing drastically. So as excited as they are, there also is that worry of, is it going to get so good that maybe I won't be necessary anymore?
AI is going to come and completely take all of our jobs. Anyone who spent time on LinkedIn or reading tech magazines has probably seen a headline like that. And in some instances, that can certainly be true. We've already seen the impact of that across a lot of organizations. Certainly, if you're in marketing or sales, you've seen rumblings and heard rumblings about how AI is going to fundamentally transform those functions. I'm sure all of us have experience with reading about some out of touch CEO who has passed down an edict that says that we're going to be AI first. And their first move after making that announcement is laying a bunch of people off. So it's a very real concern that exists in the world of work. But the question becomes, is that view of the future that catches all the headlines really what an AI embedded culture is going to look like in the world of work? What if I told you there's a way that you could embed AI into your organization, get a high degree of employee adoption, and do some really interesting things that actually spotlight how employees are utilizing AI to make their jobs more interesting and more rewarding? That's the story that we're going to tell today. And the person that's going to be joining us to share that story is Kirsten Faurot. Kirsten leads all human resources activities at Bombora. She's the chief people officer, and she's responsible for leading organizational development and collaborating with teams to help Bombora continue to grow rapidly in revenue and staff. She's got over 20 years of experience building and cultivating HR systems that function effectively for employees at all levels. She's focused particularly on driving organizational initiatives and employee development, establishing positive, engaging, and productive cultures, and directing talent acquisition and performance management. Kirsten holds a Master's of Science in Organizational Psychology from Baruch College and a bachelor's degree in International Relations from American University. She's also certified in the Hogan Personality Assessment and the Myers-Briggs Instrument Assessment. Kirsten, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's going to be a fun conversation, and we're going to get into the weeds with all sorts of stuff as far as AI, and we're going to bust a myth actually today, or maybe several. So looking forward to that conversation. But I think before we get started with what we're here to talk about, I think it's important for you to set the stage. So why don't you get us and the listeners up to speed on your company landscape and lay of the land?
So I work as the chief people officer for Bombora. Bombora is a B2B marketing data company. We've been around for 10 years, thanks to our industry-leading proprietary data. We call it intent data. And what that means essentially is that we provide our clients with valuable insights that they can use to figure out who's in market for whatever they produce or make. We help them figure out how to reach them, how to prioritize that reach, how to personalize it, and then, of course, how to measure the results. So it's extremely valuable for our clients.
I'm pretty excited. This conversation is that I think you're one of the first sales tech leaders to be on the show. And when I think about sales tech organizations, or at least that's where I put Bombora, I have some assumptions in terms of where they are from a tech stack perspective. So give us a general overview of what the organization's mindset is when it comes to technology and particularly efficiencies across the organization.
I would say overall, our mindset is to be extremely forward thinking. As a company, we're very technologically savvy, I would say. What we do and the way we provide the information to our clients, we really do meet them wherever they are, whatever systems they're using, whatever platforms, wherever they are. Do we need to give them information right into their Salesforce instance? We're going to be able to meet them wherever they are. So as a result, we actually have an extremely broad set of platforms that we work with, set of systems we work with. So it really does run the gamut. To me, what's been interesting is, of course, AI innovations can be found in all of those places. And so we've been able to really work those into all the different areas of our company.
Yeah, I want to dig in a little bit deeper and look
Mhm.
internally. One of the things that you mentioned is that as an organization, you tend to be pretty forward thinking from a technology perspective and tech savvy as well. From an internal, I guess, governance or rules of the road perspective, I think one of the challenges that comes up is when you're dealing with an organization that tends to be that way, you might have employees that are going all sorts of different directions and tinkering. So share with
Yeah.
us a little bit about how you set up the guardrails internally to define for everybody what coloring inside the lines looks like versus
Yeah.
going rogue.
So we have a lot of data privacy regulations that we are extremely mindful about. To us, that's the most important thing that we do, that we make sure that we're using the data the way it's supposed to be used. We had to make some very strict guardrails and some very strict guidelines around which LLMs are you using? What data can you upload to those? So before we really started allowing everybody and encouraging everyone to use AI, it used to be very clear who could and could not use it and what programs that they could and could not use. It was about towards the end of last year, early this year, when we really started to realize, okay, we have to expand this. And so then our head of privacy, our CTO, and our head of data science got together and really analyzed what are the systems that we want to make sure everyone can use? What kind of licenses do we need to get for those, right? Do we need to get an enterprise license so that our data does not actually go into their LLM? That kind of thing. And so now we have a very specific standard, very specific set of tools that people are allowed to use. So the engineering team might be using Claude, whereas some of our other groups are maybe using ChatGPT, the enterprise version. So it really depends on the group, but it's very clear to people you can't just go out and start using Gemini on your own and throwing stuff in there. That is definitely not okay. There's very clear information that people can use.
So when you zoom out and think about
Mhm.
how those decisions are made and what you should be thinking about, is there a framework or a checklist of questions that
Uh,
you came up with that you're like, hey, we need to consider this, or have we thought about that as you're
yeah.
working through which platforms are appropriate for which groups and which organization?
So I think the biggest and most important question people really need to ask themselves is what are they trying to achieve? Right? Am I trying to achieve faster software engineer writing, coding writing? Am I trying to achieve better marketing materials? Am I trying to achieve better recruiting efforts, right? To be able to source better candidates. I think that's the first thing people really have to decide what it is that they're trying to achieve. And then the next step would be doing an analysis of what are the systems out there and really digging into what if I feed them information, what of my information, of my company's private information, do I need to safeguard? Right? Is it if it's employee information, that is, of course, I hope everybody realize an absolute no. That should not go out to any LLM. If it's coding, what coding is appropriate? Is there coding that in our instance, some of the coding might pull from places that has data of our client. So we want to make sure that code is never put into an LLM. So it's just really figuring out what is the use case and then what is the most appropriate system. And then lastly, I would say, what are the guidelines you want to keep in mind? What has to be secure?
That's a good set of criteria. And it's interesting when you said analysis, I was thinking you would go the direction of like business process or actually how work is done to potentially identify those repetitive areas or things that could be easily automated. I would probably throw that in there as things that you need to consider too, especially when you ask the question, what are we trying to accomplish? I think going through the effort of identifying how could this given process or workflow be better is a good starting point for people who want to dip their toe in. And I think that sets the stage a little bit. One of the things that I'm wondering is with an organization that is wired like yours, I wouldn't anticipate any sort of headwinds when it comes to rolling out any sort of major AI initiative. Was that what you experienced when you started getting rolling as an organization on the AI front?
Yeah. It's people, right? People are interesting and fun to work with, and that's why I love what I do. At the same time, everybody is very aware. All you have to do is turn on the news or look anywhere, right? And what are the stories telling us? Oh, AI is coming for my job. So I think there is that reality, right? That they might have seen friends whose jobs are changing drastically. So as excited as they are, there also is that worry of, is it going to get so good that maybe I won't be necessary anymore? And to be honest, my biggest hope and all my efforts when we've been rolling these things out is to really get people to be honest about what they're thinking. Because it's much easier to deal with somebody who's telling you what's really going on in their head and help them to overcome any kind of resistance, whatever that might be, than for them to just quietly worry about it and perhaps not embrace it as much as they can and should.
Digging a little deeper, when I think about your context, you're a sales tech company. And when I
Right.
think about the sales organization, your typical predictable revenue model of building a sales organization, you got a bunch of SDRs, then you have account executives and sales engineers and so on. If I'm thinking about how is AI going to change the sales function, if I'm an SDR, the marketing that's out there says AI is going to replace SDRs. We know that the reality of it, based on our LinkedIn DMs, is quite different. It seems like there's a long way away from there. One of the things that I'm curious about, and I'm just using sales as an example, for those people that had those sort of concerns, hey, my job's going to be wiped out. How did you enter those conversations and what did you do to navigate those conversations to give a view of the future that keeps the team engaged or the person engaged versus checking out and looking at other opportunities?
So we definitely were very intentional about this. There were a couple different things we were doing. One was from the get-go, we have our monthly, we call them all hands meetings. Probably a lot of companies do this. You have everybody come in the company, they attend remotely, like in our case, where many people are not near an office. We spend an hour and a half, we go through what's happening in the company. We hear about new hires, promotions, all the great stuff. We usually have a client come in and talk as well. But what we started to do was we said, all right, we're going to devote part of this monthly, very valuable, very expensive time, because of course, every employee that works for us is there. Um, we're going to use that to showcase some successes. And that was super intentional. One, it allowed those people who were getting out there and trying these new things to get a pat on the back. Hey, I'm doing such a great job. I'm being chosen to share what I've learned and what I'm doing and to show the results of my work to the whole company, right? So it showed that person, yay, great job. It also shows everybody else, this is what you get. This is the reward you get, right? You're going to be seen as more valuable. And we've done that consistently every month since we've really leaned into this. And it's at the point now where, to be honest, we often have so many people saying, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about that. We don't have enough time to spend the entire meeting doing that. So now we have a Slack channel that's devoted to this. We have what we call AI alerts, and that's an email that can go out about some new things that are being done. And whenever anything like that happens, all the leadership team chimes in. This is great. This is amazing. So they're getting all that good, positive feedback. That being said, there's obviously going to still be people who are less open, perhaps, or maybe their amount of resilience that they have is a little lower. And so for those people, what I try to do is we meet with our managers once a month and we really try to talk to them about who's doing well, who's using it, who's not using it as much. And then we try to coach them. How are you going to talk to them to help them better embrace it? Because no matter what I try to tell everybody who says to me, AI it's a little scary. I say, listen, you got to lean in. It's not going to go away. And the people who can embrace it are going to learn how to use it and how to use it efficiently and effectively. And then the good news is you get to do stuff that maybe is the least important part of your job or the least exciting part of your job. All that manual rote work, somebody else does it for you. You still have to do the work of overseeing it, but you don't have to do it yourself. And that frees you up to have a lot of time to do other things.
Your best feedback comes from your customer base. And in this case, you're
Hmm.
trying to roll out a new AI initiative. Your customers are your employees. And by
Right.
tapping employees to build in public with what they're working on and celebrate those successes, I think that's a really strong practice in getting buy-in. When you're thinking about those all hands and those success showcases, was there anything in particular that your employees did that struck you as, oh, I never thought about that as a use case, or this is a big win?
We had one where, and this is a little technical, but we are an organization that's very heavily technologically focused. A huge part of our company, almost half, is engineering and product. And so anyway, we had one of our DevOps engineers. He's a junior, no, maybe a mid-level engineer. He had this idea of, how do I get AI to test the code that I've written quickly, right? So I don't have to test it all myself, because that's a huge amount of time, right? They have to write the code, then they have to test it. So he tinkered on this for a while, and he showed it to us last month, and everyone was floored. Everyone was like, how on earth? It saved so much time. And that's just one example. There's so many examples, but to me, that was a great one, because I feel like that's a great example of, he doesn't have to do the code review and spend as much time. He still has to check things. I don't ever want to say that AI takes over. And people that think that, right? If somebody pulled something off AI and then just gave it to their boss and said it's done, that would be a really bad luck, because that's not how AI should be used at all. But doing it this way, where you say, okay, it takes me 4 hours to write some code, and then it takes me another 2 hours or hour and a half to check it. If I can shorten that time to 15 minutes where the work is done and I can move on and do some more coding, just if you multiply that by the number of hours over a year, that's huge savings,
Yeah,
hugely efficient.
yeah, you're getting into a space where my old IT recruiter hat is getting put on, especially when you're talking about DevOps. Now, that example that you talk about,
Yeah.
where you're leveraging AI to reduce the amount of time that it takes to go ahead and do code reviews, that's a massive business impact. If I'm a
Yes.
QA in that organization and I hear that, I'm going to be freaking out like an SDR
Yeah.
would be hearing about, oh, we're going
Yeah.
to replace our
Yeah.
entire SDR function with AI agents. I'm going to have that same feeling. So, did you encounter that? And if you did, what was that conversation like to get people to think differently about what the future of their work looks like?
Yeah. So what's interesting is, the way we structure our engineering teams, we don't have a really massive QA group of engineers, right? There's a few, and those people are much more senior. And so they're looking at it at a very different level. But I'm trying to think of some other examples from our company where,
These are all the directions that we can go. We can look at just stuff that we've seen on LinkedIn. SDR
yeah,
teams getting wiped out. The QA is another
uh-huh,
example. Marketing teams getting wiped out because, so pick anything in that
yeah,
range and apply it to the conversation. And I think we
yeah.
still end up in the same space.
Another example I think that would be really interesting is recruiting, because our recruiting used to take so long. Like, a lot of times what we have to do for the roles that we're looking to fill, we really have to go after people. We'll get people applying to find the talent that we really need, because we need such specific skill sets that we have to search for them. So in any case, our recruiter got a little worried, because I kept saying to her, hey, I need you to try this new AI tool, that new AI tool. This looks really cool. I just went to a meetup and people were talking about using this, and they could find people in all different places, not just in LinkedIn. And I have to tell you, she did get really nervous. But what I did was I said, look, you have to try this and you have to lean in, because we're going to start using it. Like, we have to start using this. This is such a huge time saver. And let's see, what ended up happening was she filled jobs so much more quickly. And we had jobs that were open for 3 months that she started filling in 5, 6 weeks. So it halved the time it takes. And then, of course, what does that happen? What happens then is she has happy customers. because her internal customers are the hiring managers that are like, thank you. I really needed that job filled. I didn't want to have to wait 3 months. For me, that's one way to help them understand by really being there and walking them through it and helping them see the benefits. We're a company that's not massive. We're 160 people. So I feel like we can invest the time in our people and really help bring them along because we can see where they're maybe struggling to adapt. It's worth it. Like we feel like if wherever we can, we want to retain that institutional knowledge and we want to repurpose their skill sets if we have to. If a job completely went away, I would really work hard to try to figure out, is there another place for this person? Is there something else they could be doing? Because we want to keep growing our revenue. We want to keep growing our client base. We're not looking to just keep and be exactly the same.
This has been a fantastic conversation so far. If you haven't already done so, make sure to join our community. We're building a network of the most forward-thinking HR and people operations professionals who are defining the future. I will personally be sharing news and ideas around how we can all thrive in the age of AI. You can find it at gocleary.com/Cleary-community. Now back to the show.
Yeah, and the recruiting use case makes a lot of sense, especially if you're talking about sourcing as part of the candidate lifecycle.
Right.
That's one of the biggest areas where I would much rather spend my time interviewing solid candidates and aligning them to roles that I have open than just going through the blocking and tackling of sourcing. That was a big pain.
Absolutely.
The broad theme of what we're talking about is trying to bust this myth that AI is coming for our job. And part of that exercise involves reimagining what your job is going to look like going forward. And we'll continue to talk about that in a second, but I want to zoom back out in terms of why this myth exists in the first place. And I put the
Mm,
blame oftentimes on executives that talk about shoot the moon things and lay out edicts about, oh, we're going to eliminate this role and that role and go AI first and go all in that way. When you think about executive mindset within the organization, sometimes that executive mindset, when it's over indexed towards efficiency, can make things worse. So, where was the executive group's mindset when it came to AI and how it should be utilized for achieving strategic initiatives?
listen, that's their job, right? Their job is to make sure the business is super successful. And my job is to help them understand what are the impacts on what I believe is the most important resource that we have, which is our people. It's the most expensive resource for most companies. So that is what I've always focused on with my CEO. We have very long, not long talks, but we have very direct talks about these things. Why is it important to think about how you're saying what you're going to say, right? Before the all hands, when we talk about all hands, we usually spend a good 20 minutes going through how he's going to present whatever he's going to present, right? Because I want him to make sure he's saying in a way where people can really hear it and hear the right thing, not hear fear. I should start looking for another job, but hear, okay, this is really cool. I'm going to be able to learn some new things, right? I'm going to be able to use our learning set, but I'm going to be able to try new things. I'm going to be able to try new ways of approaching my job. And I'm going to be celebrated for that. So that's probably what I would say. What I would think, just spend some time with your CEOs, trying to help them understand how what they say is important, but also how they say it is important, because the goal is always not to just say things, but to get people to hear them, right? So
Yeah,
that's what I would say.
I want to go back to something that we were talking about earlier, and it's tied in with showcasing success, but also some of the communication strategies that you built to drive adoption. One of the things that you talked about was how you're empowering managers to have different conversations with line level employees. Tell us a
Hmm.
little bit more about what that involved and what that actually looks like when people are trying to execute. What were those conversations centered around? How did you coach people? How do you develop people to give them a view of what the future looks like?
So essentially, we have a pretty robust management training, management focused program, right? So in the HR team, there's just three of us, including me. But we make sure we meet with each people manager once a month, right? So between the three of us, we can cover all the people managers. So that's one way that we have a set of questions that we always ask them. How are your employees doing? How are they using AI? What's new? What are they doing differently? What benefits have they seen from it, right? We have monthly training sessions, which we record, right? If they can't make it, we record those so they can catch those later. And then we will be starting in January tracking more explicitly and more openly how people's jobs have gotten more efficient. So we're trying to establish that as a way where managers can have the overall KPIs, the overall OKRs, right? And then we have our department goals, and then we have our individual goals. And the individual goals for each employee is going to be, how am I using AI to make my job more efficient? And so that's a way for the manager to have something very concrete to talk about. The other thing that we have, which we really lean into with our employees, is we have a learning stipend that they can use mostly in any way they want. It has to be job related, but we've been really focused on sharing how people are using it to learn more about AI as well. And we have a resource page on our intranet where we have lots of listings of people who have taken different classes, people who have read certain books, and they oftentimes will say, this was really helpful, this was really useful. And people know, oh, that's a software engineer working with data. So I want to look at what that person is learning, or that's somebody in marketing, and they're using it to create new decks or new marketing materials for our salespeople, that kind of thing.
So one of the things that I liked about what you just described is how you're tracking efficiency across various functions, part of the conversations that you have with the leadership tier, frontline leaders, and what they should be looking at. It's easy enough for me to figure out what that looks like, let's say definitely from a developer perspective and a product perspective. But how would you apply that efficiency metric or benchmark that in an organization, in let's say marketing or even sales? What guidelines did you build for those functions to track that efficiency piece?
Yeah. So for marketing, it actually wasn't that difficult, because how much material are you producing? How quickly are you putting together sales enablement pieces? Things like that. That was all fairly easy to track because it all became quicker. And so that was something I think the CMO found was not as hard to put in place. She also has a team that was, for the most part, like super excited about all of this. It's a little trickier with sales, I will say. So we have even though we're a sales organization, we are not a sales heavy organization in the same way that a traditional SaaS company would be, because we really do sell our products in many different ways. So we actually have a relatively small sales team. But so one way, there's one group that sells particularly to advertising agencies. And so what they've been able to do is they use AI to figure out better audiences for these agencies that they would recommend for their different clients. So that's one way that they've been using AI, and they've been tracking that. And that's been, pretty helpful for them. I don't have a great example for SDRs other than it's helped us with writing the intro emails that they try to send out on LinkedIn and things like that. But we do have a pretty small SDR team. So I will say that's one of the pieces that's, for me, it's a focus for next year.
It's clear that you have a fair degree of adoption across the entire organization. But regardless of what the initiative is, you're never going to get 100% commitment from the entire employee landscape. How are you handling the people that are slow to adopt? What's the conversation and the thought process there to move them along?
Yeah. So this, I think, is an ongoing thing that we're doing with all our employees. We really want to support them, right? We want to help them succeed. So as we work with them and it becomes perhaps apparent that they're struggling, we're going to be leaning in and figuring out what can we do to help them get there, right? How can we help them understand how this can benefit them? How can we help them see how much this is going to help them be more productive and honestly happier, because they're not going to have to work on maybe some of the things that in the past they did that were not as gratifying.
Yeah, I think the emphasis on moving to more high value work and supporting the people that are lagging in ways to get them upskilled or at least rethink where they're at, it's a good policy. One of the things that you mentioned earlier that caught my attention was that within the organization, there's a fairly strong learning orientation built in. And I would expect that from a development and product led company. How do you anticipate leveraging or leaning more into those stipends or those reimbursements as a way to get more of these people further along in their adoption? How does that fit into your overall strategy?
One of the things that one of the people on my team is going to be doing is really, as we've celebrated AI, she's going to start celebrating in a much more visual and upfront way who's used the learning stipend and how they're using it. So that will start to become a cornerstone of our monthly all hands. And in addition, our CEO thinks this is such a good idea that he himself will be writing each of those people who do something like that a personal email. And he is really wonderful about that. He spends a lot of time trying to really craft something that is very specific to that person. And it's extremely valuable. Honestly, it's way more valuable than giving somebody some kind of monetary gift.
Yeah, I think especially in a tech forward organization, tapping into what a lot of people, I don't know a developer who doesn't put the opportunity to learn new things high on their list when they're trying to figure out what projects to take on, what companies to work
Yeah.
with. One of the things that stands out about the conversation that we've had so far is it seems like the organization is by and large positive in terms of its outlook, in terms of how they use AI, how it's adopting it. You're still in the process of getting more adoption and having it be more embedded. So this is a work in progress. When you look back from today and you look at where you started from, what were some of those key lessons that you learned in that process so far that you think is important for other leaders who are building their AI initiatives that they need to have on their radar so they don't make a misstep?
I think one of the things really is what we spoke about at the beginning, that you really need to figure out ways to make sure that the AI that they're using makes sense, that people aren't just, it has to be organized in a way where people can feel like they're using their time successfully, effectively. So I think first making sure that there's a real solid strategy for each team, not just overall for the company, but so that they're using tools that make sense for the work they do. So to me, that's number one. Number two, I think, is really helping them realize that we're doing what we said we were going to do. And what I mean by that is we are making AI a key aspect of our company, right? It's the AI is our thought partner. It's another employee almost for us. It's somebody that you can rely on to help you get your work done. And we support that idea by continually showcasing those successes and rewarding people for those successes. So to me, those are two really important learnings. And then I think the other thing is to allow people to be real and to let them say, "Hey, this makes me a little nervous." They shouldn't be afraid to say that out loud. It shouldn't be that everybody feels like, "Oh, I have to smile and say, 'Yes, I believe in this. I believe in this,' even though inside I'm wondering, does this really make sense? How is this going to impact me?" Because at the end of the day, I think as HR leaders, we know people are always focused on what it means for them. So you have to meet them where they are and you have to help them understand how this is going to benefit them. And if you can make that clear to them that this is not about replacing your job, it's about making your job more effective. It's about helping you have a thought partner to work with, somebody to lean on, somebody, maybe not somebody, a system to lean on that's going to help make your life easier and your work life easier. That's something where we all win. Right. And I think that to me is probably the most important part of it, of what we're trying to achieve at Bombora.
Solid stuff, Kirsten. I know that people are going to want to continue the conversation. So, for those folks who want to chat more about what you're doing in terms of AI adoption, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So message me on LinkedIn. right? I'm sure you're going to share my name on the show notes. You'll have a link to my LinkedIn profile. Just message me and I'd be happy to talk with anybody.
So again, I appreciate you hanging out with us, Kirsten, and sharing with us your experience. When I'm inventorying all the things that we talked about in this conversation, there's one particular thing that stands out as something that any organization that is looking to gain adoption on any initiative should think about, which is building that initiative in the open, and more specifically, using your frontline people as evangelists for adoption. I think one of the reasons why your initiative is going as well as you have is that you've embedded those success stories in open forum on a regular basis, and you're having
Yeah.
frontline people share their experiences to build a view or a vision for what the future looks like. And I think that's super important in building that group of evangelists from your employee groups versus having it be a top-down,
Yes.
executive-driven
Yeah.
initiative. And it's just like anything else. If I say something, I'm more likely to believe it than if you tell me the same thing. So, in that same respect, whenever you can facilitate or enable building in the open and having your employees be the evangelists for the initiative, you're going to have a lot of success in getting traction on that initiative. So, thanks for hanging out with us. For those of you who've been listening to this conversation, we appreciate you hanging out as well. If you like the discussion, make sure you leave us a review on your favorite podcast player, and then tune in next time where we'll have another leader hanging out with us and sharing with us the stories of how AI is helping them future-proof HR.
Hey, it's Thomas again. One quick question before you go. Are you and your HR team tired of answering the same employee questions again and again in Slack? If yes, our Cleary AI-powered Slack bot is here to help. It takes routine employee requests and answers it automatically while freeing up time for you to take on more important tasks. At the same time, it automatically builds up an HR knowledge base as you go. It's quick to set up, works right in Slack, and you can try it for free. Just head on over to gocleary.com/HR-chatbot to install it. It's again, gocleary.com/HR-chatbot. Thanks again.